Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's web event. I'm Aaron Vaught. I'm Director of Marketing here at Formfast, and I'll be serving as your host as we talk about FormCentral, our output management solution designed specifically for MEDITECH Magic. We brought in a team of MEDITECH specialists to share how FormCentral is a natural fit for your Magic environment for those who aren't familiar with our solution. For hospitals on the line that already have FormCentral, we'll be highlighting some new features, in particular support for our e-signature solution that allows you to capture patient consents electronically. But before we get into the event, I want to go through a few housekeeping items. First, note that questions can be submitted in the Q&A section or the chat window at any time during the event. We're going to save those for the end of the presentations and present those back to our speakers today. But feel free to send those at any time. Note that the audio for today's event will be broadcast through your computer speakers. If you join through the teleconference, make sure that your speakers are muted, otherwise you might hear an echo. If you're having problems hearing the audio, contact me, the host, via the chat window. And as always, if you have questions about Formfast or you see something that you want to learn more about today in today's session, feel free to reach out to us at 1-800-218-3512 or visit formfast.com/contact. Before we get into the meat of the event today, I realize that there are some hospitals joining us who might not be familiar with Formfast, so I wanted to give a brief overview of who we are and how we fit into the market. We provide process automation solutions for hospitals, and what we mean by that is eForms, e-signature, workflow, content management, and output management technologies. We're proud to be MEDITECH's partner for process automation solutions, and we have over 450 MEDITECH implementations around the world. We're known as the leader in electronic forms management, and that involves creating and converting paper forms into eForms, automatically barcoding those forms to prepare them for archival, and then automating the output of packets of eForms. So that's part of what we'll talk about today. I should also note that while this event is focused on MEDITECH and even more specifically MEDITECH Magic, that we do support a wide range of systems, of HIS systems, archiving systems, and other business systems in your hospital. So just something to note as your IT environment changes, that we're there to support you in providing greater automation. And with that, we have over 1,000 customers worldwide on a variety of systems. So just going through the agenda for today's event, I'm going to start off with an overview of FormCentral. We're going to cover why it's a good complement for your MEDITECH Magic environment, as well as the importance of barcoding those forms for archival. Middle section will go through some new features. As I mentioned, for existing customers who have joined us today, you'll be interested to see what's new, as well as talking about some best practices. And finally, in the last section, we'll talk about electronic signature capture for MEDITECH Magic through our e-signature solution. So make sure to stick around for that. So I'd like to introduce today's presenters before I turn it over to them. First, we have Brian Lombardi. He has more than 6 years experience here with Formfast as a solution consultant. He worked for over 3 years at a MEDITECH Magic hospital as a systems analyst, and had 8 years working at MEDITECH itself as an NPR report writer support role. In the middle section, we're going to turn it over to John Negri, who's been with Formfast for 16 years as a senior programmer. Has 5 years experience at MEDITECH hospitals as both a financial applications manager and a programming and IS manager, and 5 years at MEDITECH as a programmer and analyst. And covering e-signature today, we're going to turn it over to Ken Flagg, who has 20 years of experience with Formfast. He's a senior solution consultant, and he has 28 years in hospital IT and IT support roles. So now that we've done the introductions and housekeeping, at this point I am going to turn it over to Brian for the overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay. We're going to get into FormCentral immediately here, and we'll begin by talking about what is FormCentral. As Aaron alluded to, we focus on output management, and in FormCentral, we are dealing specifically for the MAGIC hospital. We provide on-demand printing of packets, and a packet could be an individual form or truly a packet of information of related forms. During the registration process especially, we utilize logic to determine which forms should be printed for a patient. Medicare patient, certain consent forms if you're under 18 or different versions if you're over 18. But we can use logic throughout our system as well. And another important piece is the fact that we can barcode forms. We provide patient ID as well as form ID in the format of a barcode, and that helps us on the archiving. The whole drive of our system is to help automate you. We want to make you more efficient, and we can do that in two ways. On the front end, in gathering those forms. How many of you can think of a certain spot in your hospital where you have a shelf full of forms? Nice, neat stacks, but they're full of forms. And there's a user or a secretary that knows exactly where each form is. They grab each form that they need. Well, if we want to have a race, I bet you they could probably get one form off that shelf faster than I could generate one form out of the system. But if we have to generate a packet for someone coming in for a knee surgery, and we need physician orders, consent forms, H&P, progress notes, discharge instructions, I can generate that packet faster, more efficiently, directly out of the system for you. In addition, on the back end, once that paperwork makes its way through the system and it gets down to medical records, does someone need to look through that and figure out, well, where does it go? Where does it get filed? By generating barcodes on our forms, again, both the form ID and the patient ID, we can help automate the scanning process so that those forms end up in the right spot for the right patient. Let's take a moment and start with the output that we're looking for. Again, we're trying to automate what you have, take away those pre-printed forms. So you might have a section of a form that looks something like this. Right? Authorization for release of information. Instead of pulling that piece of paper out of a drawer, we print it out of the system. We can access the admissions database, gather all of the patient data that we might need onto this form, and print it out. Another example. Here's a section of a form. Down the bottom corner, when we generate it out of the system, we include the patient demographics. It's all there for us, easily identified, nicely written. Not handwritten, not scratched in, not taking the time for someone to put a label on there, or even worse, those blue cards. In addition, you see the barcodes are there, the form ID and the patient ID. Again, scanning and archiving system reads those values, indexes the form, places it where it belongs, and it's easy to get at on the back end. Why is our system specifically for MAGIC? Well, FormCentral, what we're talking about, is an NPR application. It is written in MEDITECH's code. When we install FormCentral, we install it as its own directory. We have our own MIS, our own NPR, and we install it directly on your MEDITECH machines. Because it's installed on your machines, it's now known as an external application to MEDITECH. The most important thing of FormCentral is that it has the exact same look and feel of all of your other MEDITECH applications. Think about MAGIC users. Not MEDITECH users, but MAGIC users. Where are their hands when they're in front of the computer? They're on the keyboard. Okay. F11, I need to get out of something. I'm not sure what to plug in. F9, and I do a lookup. Those same keystrokes work in FormCentral. If you have a user that really likes the mouse, well, the new workstation has the toolbar. Go ahead, they can reach over and do a lookup. But most of the time, the end and the most important piece of this is that FormCentral looks just like MEDITECH. Your users will not even know that they are in another application. Training is so easy because of the same keystrokes that most of the time, training is simply just let the users know that something new is out there. let them know that it exists, and now they can print forms from MEDITECH. They'll figure out the rest because the keystrokes are all the same. If we switch gears and look at things from the IS point of view, what is it going to take to get this up and running? Let's start out with user setup. We have a background job that runs in our system, and because we are sitting on the MEDITECH machines, our background job can look to your live MIS user dictionary and access your users so that we can regenerate those users in the FormCentral MIS. We have parameter settings. That allows us to define a default menu or default procedure for our users. So the great thing is, you set up your users just like you do today. Tomorrow morning, by the time you come in with the midnight run, those users now have access to FormCentral. They can now print forms. A very important piece of this is that all of the security that you set up in your MIS user dictionary follows through to FormCentral. You limited some to certain facilities, they're limited to facilities in FormCentral. You limited them by location. You know, a user up on the 5th floor should not be able to see who's checked into the ER right now. We apply that same security in FormCentral. Deploying. How do we, okay, easy enough to set up a user. How do they get to it? Once again, because FormCentral is a MEDITECH application, it can be linked on any custom menu. If you provide a MEDITECH application that has a custom menu in it, you can then provide some code to link over to FormCentral. And the more access points you create, the happier your end users will be because they can get to the system and print forms from anywhere. Take a quick look at some examples of what I'm talking about and what it would look like for the end user. Here we're looking at a standard admissions menu. Next screen is pretty much the same menu with one additional entry. You'll see option number 1, link to Formfast. Choose option 1 or click on option 1. It'll kick over to the FormCentral system. I'll show you the routine in a moment. Nursing status board, for some of your clinical users might be familiar with this. On the bottom right corner of your nurse status board, standard button called Print Reports. When you click on that, it launches a custom menu. And here you can see on a custom menu, we've included a link, Print Forms from Formfast. There's that nurse status board again. And here we go. We click on it, and this links to Formfast. What we're doing, this is a typical menu that you would generate for an end user. And we're trying to keep it as simple as possible. Remember, we talked about automation, efficiency. That's what drives our system. That's what we profess as our system. And by keeping it simple, these basic end user routines, print forms by date, and then print blank forms. We're keeping it as simple as possible for the end user. Printing forms is on-demand printing. You're going to head down to a patient's room and you need some paperwork, or you're an outpatient and you have a patient standing in front of you, you need something for them to sign, you can go into the print forms routine. If you're in surgery or endo and you want to prepare for your patients that are coming in tomorrow or the next day, print forms by date allows you to plug in a location and a particular future date, and all of the patients scheduled or pre-registered for that location will default into the list. Identify the ones you need, and identify the forms you need for them. And then finally, the option to print out blank forms. Here's what the routine looks like, the main on-demand printing routine. Again, the biggest thing for your end users, it looks just like any other screen in MEDITECH that they would see. At the top, we apply some facility security. So again, you can only get into the facilities you're supposed to have access to. If you plug in a location, all of the patients registered to that location will default in. You can also just leave that blank, or later on after you've plugged in your location, you get down to that patient prompt, and just like MEDITECH, You can type in A, comma, B, lookup, and you're doing a partial lookup on the patient's name. You know their account number? Type it in. You know their unit number? Type it in. You were working with a patient previously? Spacebar, enter. It'll pull up the patient. Again, all the same functionality that your users are used to. Once you identify the patients that you need forms for, we move down to the bottom of the screen where we have category and packet. You see prompts there. You can equate that to the file cabinet or to that user that you visualized earlier standing in front of a shelf full of forms. What shelf are they going to go to? Are they going to go to the top shelf or the bottom shelf? They're in the file cabinet. They're going to go to the top drawer or the bottom drawer. That's the category. Categories are typically care areas. The emergency department might have their own category. Endo will have their category. Cath lab will have their own. Inside each category are packets. And as the word means, it can be a packet of forms. A bunch of forms that are related, that are needed for a certain thing. I'm coming in, like I said, for a knee surgery, knee replacement, and I have all these forms that I need for that. Or it could be an individual form. I need an extra sheet of progress notes. Or I need a new consent form. Patient signed it in the wrong place. So I can print out as many forms as I need, or packets of forms that I need. But again, the keystrokes are all the same. The look, the feel is the same. Everything is the same as your end users are already used to in the MEDITECH environment. To switch gears a little bit and look at it from a maintenance point of view of the system, here's just a few shots that let you know that the system is dictionary driven, just like any other MEDITECH application. Okay, we're not asking you to learn a new methodology of how to maintain a system. We're building it just like you do any of the other MEDITECH applications. You build one dictionary. This happens to be called our form dictionary. You build the next one, and you reference the form dictionary in this one. So dictionaries reference each other, and they build upon each other. Again, same methodology that you're used to in MEDITECH. Just a few other things. Everything I've kind of mentioned so far has been about on-demand printing and getting forms when you need them. FormCentral is good for, and it does have other purposes and other uses. We touched upon admissions, and we're going to talk more about that when we get to the e-signature portion. But we can also do checks, AP checks, payroll checks, direct deposit notices. Okay. If you're still using pre-printed stock, first, I'm surprised your auditors haven't scolded you for that. But if you're using pre-printed stock and you have a burster to separate your checks, you know, there aren't many of those left in the world. You know, move forward and get onto laser printing. In addition to just doing the checks themselves, we can do special features if there's a need. So for instance, if you have the volume where you need data mailers, we can modify the output so that it works both on the front side for the check and on the back side as a data mailer. In the billing department, statements, UBs, and more timely, especially just this past month, the 1500, the new claim forms. Okay. So we can print those out for you as well. So rather than have to rely on pre-printed forms for any of those three items, you can utilize FormCentral and print the plain old paper and get everything together. And again, I mentioned it before, one other thought is in the admissions process, and we'll talk more about admissions when we get to eSig, but here we are printing a wristband and labels. Okay. Any other specialty printing during the admission process or whenever, even for on-demand printing. These are all things that you can look at. Again, the whole focus of the system is that if you're a MEDITECH Magic Hospital, we can provide a system for you that is not going to upset your end users. And in terms of upset, meaning changing their style. They're not going to have to reach to the desktop and click on an icon. They can hit F11, they can hit F9, they can hit F12, just like you're used to now. And again, in the new workstation, if they're really happy with that mouse, then they can go reach for it. With that, I'm going to hand the ball off to John Negri. He's going to talk about a few things that are in the system currently beyond the on-demand printing that we talked about. John?
Good afternoon, everybody. While Brian talked about a broad overview of what our product does, I thought I would spend a few moments talking about some of the features that we have added into the system that bring some added value to it, that bring some flexibility and some power to the system beyond being able to get you off your dependence on labels, which are expensive, get you off your dependence on copy room employees and copy room equipment and 12th generation photocopies that are slightly askew and all the stuff that drives your medical records department crazy, as well as automating barcodes. We also have really powerful features that can make your whole life easier as far as they deal with this kind of information. We can utilize customer-defined screen technology, very similar to what you do in MEDITECH. In fact, almost exactly similar to what you do at MEDITECH. We have a form scheduler that allows you to automate the printing of forms. We can demand forms from a variety of different places, not just from our product. You do not have to sign directly into our software to generate output to use in your hospital. And we also have the ability to sort the output in a manner that you deem most useful to yourselves. Okay, customer-defined screen technology is one of the most powerful features in the MEDITECH system. The ability to create group responses, the ability to create your own queries, the ability to group these queries onto screens allows you to capture the data that you feel is necessary to run your business. I don't know of a hospital that has the MEDITECH system that doesn't utilize CDS technology to the nth degree. We have the ability to create these queries, add forms, and have the ability to answer those questions when a form is demanded. We can take those quick keywords, we can create keywords out of those queries and put them on the data onto the forms themselves, and we can build this all in a manner that's very similar to what we do with the MEDITECH system. So what I'm going to show you here is a standard MEDITECH MIS menu, except this is in our directory. Exactly the same as what you have in MEDITECH. If your hospital, anyone in your hospital has ever created a customer-defined screen in MEDITECH, they will be able to create one in our system without learning anything new. You'll see that these menus are exactly the standardized, customized menus. We can create a group response, we can create a query, and we can add it to a screen. What we've done here is we've shown you an example of a screen that was created, a customer-defined screen that was created in the FormCentral system. And you'll see that here we're putting some risk indicators queries onto this form. After we create the screen, from FormCentral, we use this routine right here, which allows us to pull up a screen that we created using the standard MEDITECH lookup keys. We grab this consent screen that we created right here, and when we file it, it will go in, find all the queries that were on that screen, and create a keyword for each one of those. You'll see here that we're referencing these keywords on our Enter Edit Screen dictionary here. So once we've done, this is an example of what I'll look up into our keyword field. So you'll see that they come up here as a fill type instead of a standard data element keyword. Our standard data element keywords will cover all of your basic demographic, age, sex, name fields, as well as all the visit-specific fields, location, service, admitting doctor, attending doctor. We can pull the new MEDITECH RXs, the way that they have it. They've done it, they recently remodeled all the way they do their information, and we can pull that all over with the allergies as well. And once we have all these data elements on the screen, we can go to the routine that Brian referenced, where we can identify a patient and select it. And you'll see here that once we select this consent form to print, it pops up with this box that says, do you want to enter the form data? So you can bypass this if you don't need to or don't want to. But by entering yes to this, a screen will pop up and allow you to fill in the data. Now, as anybody who has ever created a customer-defined screen is aware, what's nice about customer-defined screens is that you can force the user to answer the questions that you need them to answer. You don't have to worry about data not being filled in by making it required. You don't have to worry about data being filled in incorrectly by forcing the type of data that you want. If you want a date field set up, create it as a date field, and then they can't enter anything but a date. If you want something filled in as a yes, no, then you can set it up that way. Here we have some group responses that were set up on this field, so we can force the end users to select just the answers that we want. Now, once we do this, the information is available. Let me show you how you can just do a standard lookup here, and this is right into the group response field dictionary that we created for these prompts. Now, once they're selected, you'll see here this is an output for this particular form, and you'll see that these answers have been transferred directly to the form. This is very valuable for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is if this same information needed to be handwritten on a form, you now have eliminated the possibility of people misreading something. You've eliminated the ability for them to just ignore the question, and you've eliminated the need for them to answer it or the possibility that they may answer it incorrectly. So wherever a form is generated from our system, this can happen. You can pull data right at print time that the end user needs to put in and fill it out and just save that much time and effort and for everybody involved to get this data onto the form. This is a system, the reason we're showing this today is because many of you already have this functionality in your system if you already are FormCentral customers and they don't utilize it. And if you're not a FormCentral customer, then this is just a feature that we think is important enough that we show it out now to give you an idea of some of the flexibility that our system has. Another feature that we have that is not commonly used but is a really powerful feature for the ones that do use it is a scheduling menu. We have a system where you can create a schedule, and like everything else in MEDITECH, we use the standard mnemonic active description dictionary format, very familiar to everybody involved. You can create as many custom schedules as you like, and you can set up date ranges for how long you want this form to run so that you can update it as you need to every quarter or every biannually or however you want to do it. Now what will happen is the way we set this up is this category of forms and this packet of the forms within that category will print for this location onto this printer, which can be in a locked room if it's a HIPAA compliant form. You can have them print daily, weekly, or monthly, and you can create the time of day that you want it to start at. If you select the daily form, you can even somewhat restrict it and say, for whatever reason, you don't want it to print on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and then that can be outlined here in the days prompt. Once you set up this schedule, every day at 12:15 in the morning, all the patients on this floor will have this packet of forms generated. If you have a ward clerk or a secretary or a nurse who is responsible when they get in on their morning or afternoon or evening shift to pull together a packet of forms for the patients, as easy as our FormCentral system makes that now, and literally it's a matter of a minute or two to generate 25 forms for every person that would need it if you needed to do that, you can now have that person walk by the printer and pick it up off the printer as they walk by. You can do this for one form, you can do this for 100 forms. It's entirely up to you. It's a very underutilized feature of our system, and if anybody out there who has FormCentral now wants to look into this some more, all they need to do is get in touch with one of us and we can help you with that. Another aspect of our system that people may not be aware of is that we have the ability to generate forms in a variety of different ways. Brian touched upon how from admissions, after your registration form prints, we can automatically have forms print based on logic generated by the logic that you guys create that will generate consent forms or advanced beneficiary notices or anything like that automatically from the admission process. And we've shown you how you can demand the forms manually, and we've shown you how they can print automatically when they're scheduled. But then there's even other ways. And one of them is, we call it FormPad OE, and that's just our internal name for a feature where you can take any customer-defined screen in your system, and you can simply put some logic onto it that will allow a form to be generated right on the fly, right there, right in the middle of whatever action you're doing. And I'm going to show you that in more detail in a moment. We also can generate forms using MEDITECH ELF. MEDITECH ELF is a feature that MEDITECH has that most people a lot of people aren't even aware that they have because it's kind of hidden in MEDITECH menus, and I'll go into that a little bit more as well. And then we have our own custom routine called Form Spool, which allows you to take existing spool files in your system and automatically route them and print them and apply forms to them throughout the organization. So let me go into this a little more deeply. This is a standard order entry custom-defined screen that you have, that you may have, and this is a someone's test system that we have. They will graciously allowed us to take this information. And you'll see here that we have a custom-defined screen here. It has a yes/no prompt to it. What we've done is we've linked this to our system with our FormPat OE tool, and whenever this prompt is automatically answered as yes, it immediately pops up with a question that says print Walgreens prescription service on. Now, obviously, that would say whatever the description of the form is. It could be a MRSA form. It could be a consent form. It could be a discharge disposition form. It could be a wound care instruction form. It can be anything you want. And by simply answering yes to this question, it generates a print-on prompt. And here I get the standard MEDITECH lookup. I can do spacebar enter and get the last printer I printed to. I can do a lookup into the MEDITECH dictionary and select any printer I want. And immediately, right on the fly, I can generate this form. And as all our other forms have, barcoded data, so that you can have scanning and archiving capability with it afterwards. This is very flexible. You can do this as many times as you want from anywhere in the system you want. It's very easily supportable by your end users, and it's very widely accepted as a very powerful feature. And we've gotten a lot of positive responses on this, and people are using this throughout the organization for a variety of needs. And this is FormPat OE. If you're not using this and you have FormCentral, please just contact us and we'll help you out with that. Now, MEDITECH ELF. ELF, an acronym for electronic forms. It's MEDITECH created a routine a long time ago when people used to use overlays or the forms themselves stored on chips in their printers. We've long since got past using chips for a variety of reasons, although if you still needed to use one, we could arrange that for you, but they're not as flexible as the way we currently do overlays now. They're printer dependent, and they're not as easy to update as our system is now. What ELF allows you to do is, assuming that there's an overlay resident on printer memory, which our software can make happen, it can take any data that's being output from MEDITECH, apply it to that printer, and then invoke that overlay and have it appear on top of the form. You have the ability to control a lot of settings, as in margins and lines per inch and characters per inch, and this allows you to make sure that the data will fit on whatever form that you have it appear on. For those of you who have MEDITECH and have never heard of MEDITECH ELF or aren't familiar with it, this is a standard MIS spooling menu, and you'll see here that the spool dictionary menu is a standard item off of your menu. If we were to select that, you'll see that here there's an electronic forms option. And often in my history with FormCentral, I have worked with customers who, when I showed them this, it was the first time they'd ever looked at it. Many of you currently are using this, especially if you have Formfast in your hospital, because of things like UBs and 1500s and claims and bills and statements. This is a standard MEDITECH ELF screen to print a UB04. MEDITECH allows you to print your UB04s directly from the billing module directly to a printer without anything getting in between that process. So since we don't control the output ourselves, this is one of the few ways that we can get an overlay to appear onto that form. And so this is a very common way to get UBs and 1500s. Most hospitals, or many hospitals, are using electronic submission for those, but there's always a need to generate a form manually for lawsuits or internal reasons or auditing or something like that. So this is a way that you can use MEDITECH ELF in addition to our FormCentral software to generate laser-driven output with barcodes and data on top of it. It's a very commonly used routine in the system. If you have this, or if you have a need for something like this, we can help you. Form Spool is similar to the ELF, except we have a little more control over that. Basically, if you were to have some kind of scenario where, say, you had some kind of free clinic, and after the clinic was over, you have an NPR report that you use to generate letters to the people who visited your clinic to ask them what they thought about it, to get their response back, or if you want to generate some mailings out to your constituents in the area that your hospital would support. We can take that same exact process where you have an NPR report and you output it out. We can if you spool it and link it through our form spool routine, you can put your hospital logo on there. And instead of having an NPR-driven output where the questions are asked, you can have nice laser-generated formatted output with nicer fonts and check boxes and all the things that you might want to have on that. So what will happen is we monitor the spool groups, and anytime a new file hits that spool group, we can take it, apply the overlay to it, and send it out to whatever printer or printers that you want it to appear on. And as with all of our rest of our software, it is a standard dictionary-driven interface that has some, technical things that you may not need to manipulate, but if you do need to manipulate the data in any way, shape, or form, we give you the ability here to do that. And as you can see here, we can identify what printer we want it to, and we can identify whether we want an overlay to appear on that output. Output sorting. Brian showed the FormCentral system where we can pick up a location and all the patients on that location will appear. And if you need to print something for everyone on your location at the same time, we have often in the past gotten a lot of comments about the order in which the patients appear on the screen, and they wanted to the output to appear in a more logical way for that particular organization or that particular floor or ward or area. So we still, when you pull up the patients on a location, they're still going to appear the same way that they do now as far as how they appear on the screen. However, we do give you the customized way to output the patients in the order that you want. We've added these new routines. If you don't have these, we can get you an update and get you this software. But what we now allow you to do is you can select defaulting overriding sort levels. So we can pick room and bed, the patient's name, and then the admitting doctor underneath that. And that'll apply for all of your forms that print from the FormCentral module. But let's say that if there's an area where one specific location needs to have its own set of criteria because the doctor who runs that area or the nursing staff that runs that area prefers it to come out in a different way, you can identify the location specifically, and then for that one specific area, you can override the default sorts and get as specific as you want as how you want the output to sort. We have many other features that we've added to the software over the years that your hospital, if you have FormCentral, may or may not be using. And if you haven't been updated any time recently, we can certainly go ahead and get you that software, and we can help you work through any of the problems that you have. If there's a feature that you don't have now that you think would be useful to our software, please contact your solutions consultant, and we can work with you to see if that's something that we can implement in a future release. For now, I think that's all I had to show you, so I'd like to pass this over to Ken Flagg, and he can take you through our electronic signature features. Thank you.
Sort of review our signature capture solution that will allow you to complete your registration forms electronically. So now, not only are you eliminating labels, you're eliminating paper. You're not scanning the forms into your archiving system anymore. They're going to be transferred directly through a cold feed. And lastly, we don't lose any forms. So a lot of positives there. In this example, I'm going to use registration, but certainly the same would apply for any area in the hospital that you may interact with patients and forms being signed and completed. Okay, like I said, we're going to concentrate on the registration area for this example. Here is a typical setup. There is a monitor for the patient. That monitor is going to display the form that the patient is about to be signing or completing. They also have a signature device. Signature device is pretty much like anything you'd find in a retail store, so nothing unfamiliar to the patient. Registration clerk obviously on the other side of the desk, and they have their own monitor and PC, etc. Now, what the patient is going to see is strictly the form. They're not going to see anything on the registration clerk's PC. So they'll only be seeing what they're about to sign. Okay, just an example here of a patient. You can see how it looks there. They've got the dual monitor set up, the forms being displayed so the patient can clearly see what they're about to complete. Over on the right-hand side of the picture here, we just have a close-up of the signature device, and down the bottom there, just kind of a close-up of what it would look like on the form. Now, what I just showed you was a typical setup. We also have some mobile e-signature solutions, either through using an Apple iPad or a tablet PC. We often find those in settings like the emergency room where a patient may be in a bed and not possible to come to a desk to sign the forms. Okay, so I'm going to pick this up as a registration clerk. This would be in MEDITECH's admission system. They've completed the registration and they're about to file it. Okay, we're going to add this prompt into their process to gather signatures. If they were to click yes, it's going to launch our, what we call our capture client. This is a web-based product, as you see here. So what we're seeing on the left-hand side of the screen are 3 forms that are waiting to be signed. The forms have appeared on the screen based on predefined logic that we've built into the system. So the clerk doesn't have to remember what forms are required. In this particular case, it identified that the patient has Medicare as an insurance, so one of the forms we're going to need this patient to sign is a Medicare message. Below the Medicare form, you're going to see 2 additional forms. There's a general consent, and then we also have a consent for photography that we're just going to show you. You also note any patient data that's required on the form is already pre-populated. Patient's name, account number, medical record number, anything that would need to appear can already be pre-populated. Okay, so the 3 forms are on the left-hand side. The first form that is waiting to be signed is our Medicare message. If you look towards the bottom, you'll see that there's an outline box of where the signature is going to go. The registration clerk would just simply click that box or the icon there, and that's going to activate the signature device that I showed you earlier. When they do, they can sign the form, as you see is taking place here. All right, so that pretty much completes the first form, just a simple signature box. We're going to scroll down to the second form, which is the informed consent. Okay. All right, this one has an additional box, so the patient has already signed their name. The witness box can be completed in one of 2 ways. The clerk could either use the same signature device that the patient used and either initial or sign their name. Or we have a feature where they can right-click it, and as you can see, there's a little self-sign button that appears. If they click the self-sign, it's going to electronically sign it. So it looks something like that. E-signed, it tells you who the user was, and along with the date and time that the clerk signed the form. Right. Alternatively, they could have done the same thing the patient did. They could have left-click the box and initialed or signed their name. All right, so we've got 2 forms completed. Last form that needs to be completed for this patient is a consent to photograph. And this has a couple additional fields on the screen. At the top, you're going to see a checkbox. So acknowledging that you've read something could be used as opposed to initialing. Down towards the bottom in between the 2 signature boxes is what we call a text box. and this will just give the registration clerk the ability to type in whatever information that may be required that they're gathering from the patient. Okay, just shows you an example of what it looks like. Click a checkbox, check mark appears. In the text box, all they've simply done is typed in the word self. Go to the next screen. All right, the form is completed. The patient has signed it. You notice there's also a print button up there. So if at this time you want to provide a patient with a copy of any of these forms, you can do that through a print screen and print it out to the local printer. But now that we have 3 completed forms, the next thing we'd want to do is archive the forms. So if you're using MEDITECH's archiving product, we could send it there. If you're using another vendor, maybe such as Horizon Patient Folder, we can send it off to those folks as well. All right, so just click on the Done button, takes the forms, puts them into a TIFF format, and those TIFF formats are then cold-fed into your scanning and archiving product. Lastly, the application would close and bring the user right back into their Magic system. So completely seamless to the user. It's controlled through Magic. There's nothing that they need to, leave MEDITECH environment and go to another system. It's all controlled through MEDITECH. So that's completes the signature piece. I'm going to pass it on back to Aaron.
Thank you very much, Ken. I want to take a minute to thank Ken and John and Brian for the presentations, for sharing that information with everyone. At this point, we're going to open it up for questions. Just a reminder that you can submit those on the right side of the screen in the chat window or the Q&A section. And we do have a couple questions that have come in. First one is, we have FormCentral, but not some of the features shown. Is there a cost associated with getting those features? And I think I'm going to direct that question to John Negri.
No, there's no cost associated with that. If you're currently a FormCentral customer and you saw any features that you do not have, then simply get in touch with your solutions consultant, and we will arrange to get you an update of the software as well as training on those features, and we'll be happy to do that. Just let us know.
I have another question coming through. How do we schedule the updates and maybe some training? And I think you just answered that, John. But we'll reach out to this individual. But in general, if you want to reach out to our team about updates, training, and other improvements to your form strategy, once again, reach out to us at formfast.com/contact or 1-800-218-3512. Another question, do you support Android tablets? And I think this is in regards to the mobile e-signature. So I'm going to direct that to Ken Flagg.
Yep, pretty much any tablet we have a solution for.
Excellent. And I should note, I should mention that with the mobile e-signature solution, that's supports is based on HTML5. It's agnostic to platform, like Ken said. Also, I should mention that we had a couple questions in the chat about when we're going to have a webinar on MEDITECH 6.0. If you have interest in a webinar on that platform, send me a message in the chat, or once again reach out via the channels that I mentioned, the contact page and our phone number, and we'll be happy to set up a personalized demo on those platforms. Looking to see if there's any other questions coming in. Valerie would like to know, when the patient is in the ER, will the tablet show the form? And once again, I'll direct that back to Ken.
Yeah, I think on the picture I showed you, it just had the signature device, signature box, I'm sorry. But what it would allow you to do is to see the form, and then you can zoom in to where the patient needs to sign.
Okay. We'll give the Q&A just one more minute for questions. Another question, a follow-up, I believe. Can the patient e-sign their own pre-printed forms? In other words, the forms that they would have there at the hospital today.
Can a patient?
And I think if I'm understanding the question correctly, they want to know if they can take their existing pre-printed forms that they're using for manual sign consents and make those electronic through our software to e-sign.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Yeah, definitely. We can, any form that you currently have in paper or built electronically, maybe in Word or Excel, we can import those forms into our system. You may want to make some tweaks to it just to, support electronic signature. I've seen, you may want to make signature boxes bigger, things of that nature. So there may be a little bit of form redesign, but as long as you have it, like I said, on paper now or an electronic version, it's a pretty simple process.
Okay, we'll give the questions just one more minute. And while we're doing that, I'll go ahead and share some information about upcoming Formfast events. Big event coming up in June. We will be having our annual user group meeting on June 17th and 18th, and this is going to be a virtual event as we've done in the past. It's going to be very similar to what we did here today, allowing people from across the country to come together over WebEx for those 2 days. It's going to be 11 to 2 Central Time each day, and you can register now at formfast.com/webinars. So we encourage you to take a minute and go to that link and register for both days. Some of the things we'll be featuring during that event, we'll be doing the launch of the 6th version of our FastFlow workflow platform. We're excited about the new features that our team have developed for FastFlow, and we're excited to share that with you. So definitely join us for the launch of FastFlow 6. We'll also take some time to share some user success stories, use cases and best practices directly from hospitals like you. We'll also be featuring a user roundtable, bringing representatives from hospitals together to talk about how to improve their form strategy, as well as other automation strategies in different areas of the hospital. And finally, we'll have virtual breakout training sessions. So you'll get to choose which of the Formfast products you want to learn more about, and have one-on-one sessions with representatives from Formfast, like Ken and John and Brian, and that'll be ad hoc based on the product that you want to learn about. So definitely join us for the user group meeting. Once again, formfast.com/webinars is the place to go to sign up for that. And it looks like that is it for our questions. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us. As the session closes, you're going to be presented with a screen that will allow you to request more information or demonstration if there's something that you would like to learn more about, or something or a solution that Formfast provides that we didn't get a chance to cover today. So take a minute to check that out. Thanks for your attendance today, and we'll see you in June for our user group meeting.